And thank you very much, Randy. Again, the number to dial, 888-ASK-HANK, numerically 888-275-4265. Contact information on the web, equip.org, and via the mailbox, 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. I do want to follow up on a call that I got yesterday. I promised Clifford when he called in and asked a follow-up call that I would get back to him on that question on today's broadcast. Clifford was calling in from British Columbia, Canada, and yesterday he asked me about an apparent contradiction between Matthew and Luke. Why the apparent contradiction? Because in Matthew's gospel, there's an account of Joseph, Mary, and Jesus going to Egypt, while Luke leaves out this account altogether. He focuses instead on the return of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus to Nazareth. This, of course, is not a contradiction, as I mentioned on yesterday's broadcast, but the reality that the gospel writers collectively flesh out the story of Jesus, each with their own unique emphasis. Well, Clifford followed up asking about Mark 1 and John 1. And I thought I'd written about this in my book, Has God Spoken? But it turns out I haven't. So I looked into this. The way the question was posited by Clifford yesterday on the broadcast was that Mark 1 says that immediately after the baptism of Jesus Christ, he went into the wilderness for 40 days being tempted by Satan. In John 1, however, you have Jesus on the very next day after baptism choosing the disciple John, and then choosing Philip the next day, and then the third day after that, he went to the marriage course in Cana of Galilee, and after that he went to Capernaum, and so on. I'm sure you know the story. So how do you reconcile Mark 1 with John 1? Well, it turns out that the recounting that Clifford gave of the Gospel of John was not quite right. The Apostle John does not say that the very next day after the actual baptism that Jesus chose the disciples and so on. Rather, the reference to the next day in John chapter 1 refers to the day after John the Baptist had very publicly testified to being involved in the baptism of Jesus Christ, or baptizing Jesus Christ. So the Apostle John is simply recounting John the Baptist's personal testimony of witnessing the Holy Spirit descending and remaining upon Christ at his baptism. So in the Gospel of John, the question of exactly when Christ's baptism occurred in relation to the other events is not even considered. It occurred just sometime in the past from the point of view of John the Baptist. If you harmonize John with Mark, and not only John with Mark, but John with Mark and Matthew and Luke, you find a chronology emerging. John the Baptist baptizes Jesus. Christ then is led into the desert by the Holy Spirit and tempted by Satan. And then John the Baptist is questioned by the Jewish leaders as to whether he himself is the Christ. And then on the day following this questioning, Christ returns to the place where John was baptizing. So, as I noted on yesterday's Bible Answer Man broadcast, the four gospel writers do not give us the exact same story in the exact same way. If they did that, we would cry out this famous word that's being used in the political circles, collusion. Each writer, instead of colluding, is independently choosing what to include and what not to include in the life and ministry of Jesus. Remember that John the theologian said Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them was written down, I suppose that not even the whole world would have room for the books that would have been written. So here's the bottom line. A consensus of credible scholars discerns a core set of reliable facts presented by the gospel writers. One indication, therefore, of the authentic and reliable gospel writers is the fact that they are each telling the story in their own way. They're offering complementary details such that the independent accounts taken together flesh out the entirety of the story. Hopefully that helps in terms of the follow-up. Clifford, if you're listening in, and for everybody else that was interested in this very insightful